In this explainer, we're going to debug the very code of our social contract. What if our biggest, most persistent problems aren't actually failures of character, but system errors, bugs that we can actually fix?
So, here's our game plan. We'll start by decoding a system error that's been hiding in plain sight. Then, we're going to audit the social ledger, engineer a whole new approach to human rights, look at the economic argument for all this, and finally, lay out the mission we have ahead of us. Let's dive in.
All right, let's kick things off with a pretty radical idea. What if a phrase that most people write off as just, a cultural philosophy is actually a technical problem, one that has a real, tangible solution?
To really get this, we need to ask a pretty deep question. Just take a second and think about it. When does a person truly, fundamentally break? The answer? Well, it might not be what you think.
There's this line from the manga Pumpkin Scissors that just absolutely nails it. See, it's not the initial hit that shatters a person, it's the silence that comes after. It's that moment you finally scream for help and you get nothing but static in return. And way too often, society's response is just this one phrase, Shouganai. We hear it and think, oh, it can't be helped. We see it as this kind of cultural fatalism, right? Just a shrug when faced with someone's pain. But what if we've been translating it wrong this whole time?
Let's actually look at the word itself, at its roots. When you break it down, something really interesting pops out. Shio doesn't mean fate, it means method, or even more precisely, specifications. Yeah, like in an engineering blueprint. And nai, that just means none.
So, Shouganai isn't some deep philosophical statement. It's a technical status update. It's our social operating system throwing an error message that says, specifications not found. This isn't destiny. It's a system failure. And if it's a bug in the code, well, that means it can be fixed.
Okay, so if personal suffering is a system error, how do we even begin to account for all the damage it causes? Well, that brings us to our next step. We have to audit the social ledger.
Look, in fields like social work, you see behaviors every day that society is super quick to label as evil or broken. But if you put on an engineering hat, you start to see something totally different. You don't see moral failures, you see fight responses, predictable, logical outputs from a system that is itself broken.
And this leads us to a core principle we call structural innocence. Honestly, the best way to get it is to think about that amazing scene in Good Will Hunting. When the therapist, Robin Williams, keeps saying, "It's not your fault," he's not just offering comfort, he is making an auditor statement. He's saying the debt for all that trauma got posted to the wrong account. It belongs to the environment, not the person. The individual isn't broken. The system just doesn't have the specs to support them.
So that's the mission. We have to perform a ledger correction, because right now our social accounting is, frankly, fraudulent. It takes systemic failures and records them as personal liabilities, as sin. We need to go in and reclassify that debt for what it actually is, an environmental failure, a debt that the system owes to the individual. So we've spotted the system error, and we've corrected the ledger. What's next? Well, now we have to actually build the tools to fix the machine. And that's a job for engineering, not just good intentions.
And this is a fundamental shift in thinking. The goal here is not charity. Charity just puts a band-aid on the symptoms. The goal is engineering, fixing the underlying broken structure. And that is the whole purpose of the framework called SoE, which stands for Service of Empowerment. It's designed to finally restore the rights our social contract promised but never delivered.
Now, a core tool for this is a completely new way of looking at AI. Think about most AI ethics systems today. They try to fix problems at the output stage. They try to filter out harmful stuff after the AI has already processed a mountain of biased data. But by that point, the damage is already done. SoE flips that around. It uses something called input constitutional AI. It applies rights protection at the very beginning, at the input stage, the exact moment a person's life and story are recorded as data.
And this is it's absolutely crucial. Why? Because if your data is warped from the get-go, if the system writes down your struggle as a personal failing, then no amount of filtering at the end can ever fix it. The truth is already gone. Protection has to start at the input. It just has to.
Now, I know this might all sound a little idealistic, but it is actually grounded in some really hard-nosed pragmatism. There's a powerful, powerful economic case for fixing these system errors. So what are you looking at? 29.4 to 1. Based on preliminary data, this is the estimated social return on investment. It means for every single dollar invested in this kind of rights recovery framework, society gets back over $29 in value. That comes from things like increased tax revenue, reduced social security costs, and even lower crime rates.
This completely reframes the entire debate around welfare. It stops being just a charitable cost, a drain on the system. In this new paradigm, it becomes two things. First, it's the state repaying a debt it owes for failing to deliver on promised rights. And second, it's a high-return investment in human potential and, really, in our collective economic future.
So, where does all this lead us? It leads to the workshop. And this isn't some abstract think tank. It's a workshop. It's a place where we roll up our sleeves and build. And this really gets to the heart of the mission. We are the engineers writing the missing code. We are building the technical specifications, the SoE, that are needed to handle the lives our current system just crashes on. We're forging the tools to finally make good on the promises our society made but never actually kept.
So I want to leave you with one final and I think crucial question. For centuries, we've been trying to fix people, to fix their character. But what if we've been working on the wrong problem this whole time? What if the issue was never the person, but the very design of the system they were forced to live in? Because if that's true, it changes everything.